Okay, we will start in about a minute or so. I would encourage everybody to go on mute. I notice Bruce Davis and Andy Pico are not on mute. And me. So. Okay, it is 9 a.m. I'm going to go ahead and call our PPACG September Board of Directors meeting to order. Good morning and welcome everyone to our lovely summer day. I'm very happy to see all your bright smiling faces. Cammie, look at you smiling. So Jessica, I don't know, how do we want to go ahead and call and have introductions this morning, or make sure we have everybody here?
I'll go down the attendees list and name off all the board members, and then after that, if you want guests to introduce themselves, we can do that as well.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go ahead and do that now. So I see Jill, Andy Pico, Yolanda,
Yep.
Sharon, John Graham, Bruce Davis, Valcar, Cammie Bremer, Dick Elsner, Norm Steen, Glant, Ronald Jeffrey for Schriever, Andy Gunning, staff of member governments and citizens. Is there any board members that I did not see yet or missed? Oh,
I see Holly Williams here.
Hello.
looks like we're freezing here a little bit. So. Holly Williams. So another note too on this, it looks like and internet's been kind of sketchy everywhere lately, but on these big meetings like this, it can bog down. So if you're not speaking or using your screen, it also helps just to turn your camera off. When presenting, just make sure to be really descriptive and give a heads up about what you're talking about, as not everybody is on visually, some only are on the line. And then last, if you'll just say your name when making a motion, that way we can capture that if there's any lag or anything like that.
I see
That's
Stan Vanderwerth has entered the meeting. Good morning, Stan.
All right, Stan.
So,
And good morning, Madam Chair.
are there any other board members who we have not called?
I'm here.
Sharon, I think we got you, but it's always good to get you again. Okay,
I'm still struggling to do this with an iPad, but I am at PPACG, so if I have trouble, I've got help.
Great. I'm just glad you're here. Jessica, do you want to let us know who also is here, not on the board, please?
Sure. I can just name off who I see on the screen. I don't keep track of those in a list, but sure. So looks like we have for PPACG, Mr. John Leosatos, Jody Barker, Jessica McMullen, Catherine Wanger, Casey Partridge, Other guests that I see on the line, also for PPACG, our new fellow, Ariel Pizzoa, is with us today. It's his first meeting.
Morning, Ariel. Welcome.
Let's see, for guests,
Thank you, ma'am. Good to be here.
Go ahead, Jessica. Sorry.
let's see, Mike Schaefer for Peterson Air Force Base. Sure, no problem. Shane Ferguson for CDOT. Gordon Pierce, Kimberly Lee on the line. Eric Stone, Travis, Mark Northrop for PPACG. We have a big crew today. Jason Bueno Silverkey, Laura Cruz for PPACG, and many more. Big group today.
So is there anyone on the line that wants to make sure we know you're there? Please let us know now that we haven't mentioned you.
Hi, this is Melissa Porter from the Air Force Academy.
Good morning,
Thank you,
Colonel.
Melissa.
Good morning.
Excuse me. Anyone else? Okay, well, we can move on to our next item on the agenda, and that is approving today's agenda. If you have looked at that and are accepting of that, can I please get a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve. I'll second.
Please
Yes,
remember
Andy.
to say your name. Okay, Andy motioned. Can I please get a second?
Yolanda
No,
second.
Okay, and a second from Yolanda. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Hi.
Any nays? Okay, that motion passes. We can move on to public comments. This is an opportunity for those in the public to speak for up to 3 minutes on any item that is not on today's agenda. So if anyone is out there that would like to speak, now is your time.
And Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Stan. I just was trying to mention an additional person that's here as a guest today, and that's the Teller County Assessor, an elected official, Mr. Colt Simmons. I don't know that he's speaking or not, but I just failed to get that out before we headed into the meeting because I had mute on.
Thank you, Stan, and good morning. Is Mr. Sims? Is that what I heard?
Simmons.
Simmons.
Good morning. Thank you.
Glad you're here. We do have quite a crew today. It's going to be a great meeting. You're lucky to be here. Okay, Andy, I'm just okay. It doesn't appear we have any public comments. We can move on to item 4, which is consent items. You can see there are 4 items on consent. If no one wants to pull anything off consent, I would appreciate a motion to approve the consent calendar.
This is Norm. I move to approve.
Thank you, Norm.
This is Holly. I will second that.
Thank you, Holly. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Okay, that motion passes. We are moving on to our action items. The first action item is fiscal year 21 through 24 tip amendment number 4, the STP Metro cost overruns request. I think that is Catherine. Good morning, Catherine.
Yes. Good morning, Catherine Winger, Senior Planner, PPACG. So this is a amendment number 4 request for our 21 through 24 TIP or Transportation Improvement Program. This is for, so in June, PPACG released a notice of funding for just over $3.4 million. We received 3 applications, and this is from our member governments that were applying for these funds. These funds are for cost overruns specifically, so not any new projects, just ones that are currently listed in the TIP. And so we did receive 3 applications. One of them is from Fountain for $500,000 for their Indiana and the BNSF crossing, or the railroad crossing program project there. Colorado Springs for their 30th Street roadway improvements, and then El Paso County for local match replacements. This would be, they would replace their local match with toll credits from CDOT, but those those local match also need to be replaced with other federal funds. So this would replace those for various projects. I'll just list those quickly. They have a Bradley Road widening, Power South Corridor study, a Galley Road sidewalk design, Arnold Bridge, El Paso County wetland bank, and a local road safety plan. and a Falcon Park and Ride that they would do the toll credit replacement and local match replacements with this funding. So Colorado,
Is there any plan going back and raising all our electric lids out there?
I'm sorry?
Inslee?
I'm unmuting my microphone. Take a breath.
Chill your beans.
Okay, can we please ensure we're on mute if we're not talking? And if someone was trying to comment, can you please state your comment again, please? Okay, go ahead, Catherine.
Thank you. All right. And so after this initial applications were received, there was some discussion that not everyone would be able to get the full request that they had. And so they asked for more time to further discuss and try to find a win-win scenario for everyone. And so after further discussion, El Paso County and Colorado Springs did provide kind of some opportunity that they think would help everyone. So a new NOFA was released in August for just over 7.4 million instead. And so this would help with that win-win scenario for all three of the applicants. So, and just as a note, that NOFA provided in August allowed all jurisdictions to have the opportunity to make additional applications if possible. And then the applications revised to include projects and TAC recommendations that you see in the table. So the recommendations for this would be that Fountain receives $500,000 of their request to add to their project. Colorado Springs would return funds from Hancock and Academy improvement projects. El Paso County would return 1.9 million of their Walker Road corridor improvements in FY21, and then they would ask for those funds in 2022 to replace and make that project whole again. Colorado Springs would receive 2.3 million for their 30th Street project, and then El Paso County would receive just over 2.6 billion for those local match replacements. And so that would be the Amendment 5 request, and TAC and CAC both recommend approval to the board.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board on all that Catherine has shared with us?
Madam Chair, this is Norm, Teller County.
Go ahead, Norm.
Thanks. I just want to note that the last item, the El Paso County local match replacement by toll credits. As you all know, there are no tolls being collected in El Paso County.
Right.
This is an extension by CDOT of tolls, perhaps future credits. Maybe John, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is against an expectation of tolls being collected, resulting in a benefit to El Paso County for the match of $2.65 million. So I just want to extend my thanks to CDOT headquarters for doing some very creative financing and for extending the credits yet to be collected to the benefit of El Paso County.
Thank you, Norm. I had the same thoughts about this, but I also kind of wanted to ensure that everybody understands these funds for future toll credits are coming out of, are going toward the commitment El Paso County made to fund the gap. And now they are not committing to that initial requirement. And so they are replacing their funds with future toll credit funds. And so I guess from my perspective, I struggle with this because I have heard that some of the county commissioners don't even support the toll road. So I guess I'd like a verbal commitment from all of the commissioners here from El Paso County to let us all know that you do support tolls, and when the gap is complete and when we put the toll lanes on that portion of I-25, that you will all be very supportive since you all are receiving funds from those tolls that are not even in place yet.
This is Commissioner Bremer from El Paso County, and I am absolutely in support of what Norm said very well, that this is a creative way that does extend, I think speaking for myself, what I was looking for in terms of in terms of kind of a commitment from CDOT. So I am in favor.
This is Commissioner Williams. So I will say there's two different issues here. So while I don't support tolls, I do support us meeting our full commitment to I-25 because it was a grant and a contract that we signed with the federal government. So I'm very much in support of meeting that full commitment. This is one of our many creative ways of getting there. We're having to change around some stuff with local projects, but the second Jen Irvin heard about the possibility of these toll credits, which had never been freed up before, we were the first county statewide to ask, what's the process? And so we are trying our best amongst very difficult circumstances to meet that commitment. And that's my commitment to this board, that we will meet the commitment that I intend to. So.
And this is Stan to kind of round out the comments from the 3 county commissioners. Just making sure you all can hear me.
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, great, thank you. So I support this this approach. I think it's a very innovative approach, and you know, there's some convolution in the process, but in essence, it means that the toll collection that the state will do, ultimately, some of that will come back to some of the commitments that that we had made. I think that's healthy. I can tell you. I do not support the tolling. The analysis that I've done, it suggests that the toll lane actually will not be that beneficial from a safety point of view. And also it actually increases aggregate wait times. It reduces wait times for those that use the toll lane, but increases wait times for the other 2 lanes. So I'm not in support of the toll lane, but it really doesn't make any difference because us commissioners have no authorities to enforce a toll lane or not enforce a toll lane. That's a CDOT decision. And they chose to put the toll lane. So having said that, I continue to appreciate what CDOT is doing with regard to this innovative approach. It's, if you will, it's a second best approach for me, which is CDOT helping to contribute through the revenues of the toll lanes for some of the local commitments. And I think that's really outstanding. So I do support this going forward.
Andy, you have a question?
Thank you. Just as a small, I don't want to say correction, but maybe clarification. You correct me if I'm wrong, but I think these are not based on future toll credits, but rather tolls that have already been collected. And the toll credit program is applied at the state level. So when I drive to Denver and I use the toll lanes as an El Paso County resident, I am paying into it. And then it is being applied back at the state level. So I don't think that changes the conversation at all, but it's not based on future toll revenues. It's on what's already been collected because CDOT does have a balance on the toll credits that they've allowed to be applied to local governments around the state, given the current situation.
Thank you, John. Andy, did you have a question?
Yeah, that helps. That was half the question. But the toll lanes aren't actually coming that far into El Paso County. So I was a little bit confused about what tolls were being, these are being matched against.
Maybe I can help. This is Norm again. So the tolls, by federal law, by the highway rule perhaps, is that the tolls must remain in the corridor. The question is, the corridor would extend from, of course, from Colorado Springs all the way to Denver. So it's as long as those toll credits stay in the toll corridor, that's the basis of my assumption. And John, I don't, if you understand that those tolls could come from anywhere in the state by maybe perhaps a CDOT rule, that helps. But anyway, we're all in this together. That's kind of the main point, is that we all understand that we're all working for the same public.
Yeah, that goes to my question. I was wondering under what section the tolls are being collected in the corridor. That answers the question. Thanks.
So John, I feel like I'm hearing 2 different things. Do the tolls have to stay in the corridor, or can they just go to a central pot and be taken anywhere in the state?
Actually, they're two separate programs. And again, hopefully I'm not messing this up, but if we have within the state of Colorado, we have the toll commission, right? And the toll commission has set the rules that say tolls collected that go back to, have to go back to within the corridor. That's absolutely correct. Toll credits is a separate federal program, basically to sort of encourage the practice of tolling around the country, and to also sort of ensure that there's sort of skin in the game for these other things. So that's a federal program. So the federal toll credit program is applied at the state level. And again, it's based on all the tolls collected within the state. And then that can then go back to be used other places, not necessarily even on roadway projects. Toll credits could be applied for, let's say we had a planning study in El Paso County that we wanted to do. We could apply for toll credits on that, and it could apply for planning something that has nothing to do with it. So toll credits are more of a mechanism for the overall federal funding source, while the tolling within the corridor and the actual money goes back to the corridor. That's a HPTE, I think is the toll commission's name. That's their rule that says the money goes back there. So it's kind of little separate things. One's a financing mechanism by the feds. The other is the actual dollars being put back into investments. Is that helpful, or did I mess it up? More.
So I see Sharon, you have a question?
I don't even know where to begin at this point. I thought I understood it, you know, how that goes. John, you just added a whole nother layer. Okay, so I guess my question to everybody is everybody comfortable voting on this as a whole? Or do they want to pull off the El Paso County and do that as a separate vote, since the CDOT toll credits is involved? Because basically if we vote for toll credits, we're basically saying we approve of it being correct.
I think that's my, is that you, I mean, we are saying we want to use toll credits to ensure that we honor our commitment of funding part of the gap, and yet we don't support toll credits. And I think we, as Norm's saying, that we are all in this together, we have to be all in this together as a state and say, we support toll credits, we support using the funds from the toll credits so that we can honor our commitments, and we should be of one voice. And I feel like we're not.
Well, if I could say one of the things with the toll credits as well, when we met early on in the year with CDOT and the FHWA, they were not happy at all with helping us on getting us to meet this match. And COVID-19 changed everything. And this became a funding source that was not available before the economy was shut down. And I think it's to our advantage to take advantage of it, because, you know, we will eventually have those toll lanes through Colorado Springs. And these are roads that are owned by the state. This appears to be the direction the state is going. And I think it's to our advantage to fight for every penny we can get on this. And getting this commitment met helps not only El Paso County, it helps Manitou, Fountain, Colorado Springs, all the people who come down here, because we have to realize the new way to get into the mountains on the weekend is going to be Highway 24 or Highway 50. People are getting pretty tired of the I-70 corridor. So I think that we need to realize that this is a very beneficial way to fund our roads. And it's a very creative way CDOT is trying to move towards. They're looking at every different way that they've never said roads could be funded, because the funding for roads are just so tough right now. So that's why I would ask for you to support it.
Thank you, Holly. I do appreciate CDOT being very creative in this for our transportation projects.
I guess I'm looking long-term. If I'm not an elected citizen and I
We can't hear you, Sharon.
toll credits, then is CDOT you toll credits, therefore you approved of tolling?
You cut out there.
That's what I'm not hearing the answer.
Yeah, you cut out there, Sharon. Can you just say that one more time?
I know the connection is really bad here. I said, I guess as an outside person, maybe not as an elected official, does it look like if we take the toll credits, we approve of toll lanes? That's what I'm not hearing a yes or no answer on.
This is Stan, if I might try to respond to that. So regardless of whether I'm a supporter of toll lanes or not, CDOT makes that decision. And the federal government now has toll lane credits. And this was an opportunity that was made available, just as Holly mentioned, as a result of coronavirus and then everybody's willingness to negotiate to an agreement. So whether we like toll lanes or not, it is an incentive process from the federal government. If CDOT decides there's going to be a toll lane on highway so-and-so, I think I would continue to support taking or looking at the opportunity to partly fund that with toll credits from the federal government. It's their incentive program to try to encourage more toll lanes. If it's inevitable, the toll lane will be there, and there's nothing that I can do about it, then I think we should take the opportunity of those federal dollars to assist with that. So to me, that just feels logical. And at this point, it really isn't a matter of whether I support or don't support toll lanes, because the toll lane is going in on I-25. And so it now fits into that category of being eligible, as well as other highways in the future in Colorado, being eligible for toll credits from the federal government as an incentive program.
This is Glant Havener, Town of Palmer Lake. I would encourage everyone that has no idea what this is what the GAP project is affecting the town of Palmer Lake. It is horrifying. People get off the road at Larkspur, they drive down Highway 105, and you can't get out of the neighborhoods in Palmer Lake. Our roads are packed. Our porta potties and things near Highway 105 that we've had to put in, it's adding huge expenditures for our town. It is literally so packed. If you want to run to the grocery store 2 miles away, you can't get out onto Highway 105 because of all the people coming off the GAP project trying to avoid it, getting off at Larkspur and Perry Park and coming up Highway 105 and Spruce Mountain from Larkspur into Palmer Lake. Our roads can't take it. The truckers that are trying to avoid the way station just past the GAP project on Monument Hill, the massive trucks, they're coming through Palmer Lake. You should see what this is doing to the quality of life for our residents. It is horrifying. You know, so I would say with the credits, can Palmer Lake use some of it to replace some of the roads and the damage that's being done to Palmer Lake that we do not have the budget to take care of due to the GAP project? The GAP project is destroying our roads and destroying our quality of life.
I think there's two important things on that, and I meant to talk to you, Glant. Shane Ferguson is on the call here. I would recommend that you and CDOT get together, because I know that with Highway 83, we had some similar problems. We were able to get a light installed, those kind of things. And I think it's something that CDOT may be able to help you out with financially as well. The other thing, in answer to Sharon's question, and not to bring politics into it, but the political reality is our state has had the people in charge for more than 14 years who don't necessarily want roads to be the #1 priority. And so even when it comes to something like the marijuana settlement money, there's a legislative report that says roads are number 9 out of 12 for receiving any of that money. And so we need to realize the political reality of the state we're living in is we have been underfunding roads for at least 14 years. And so we may be looking at toll roads for quite some time. And it seems to be kind of one of the trends. I mean, I know Utah has a lot of high occupancy vehicle lanes and tolling lanes. And so it seems to be also the trend in the industry. So while we may not ultimately support it, I think it seems to be the trend where we're going to.
Thank you, Holly. I'm feeling like we are about to stray off the item. So let's come
So,
back.
Madam Chair,
Who's talking?
Jennifer Irvin, El Paso County Engineer. Can I maybe help a little bit here?
Go ahead.
I just want to make sure people understand tolling credits, because this is kind of a unique thing, and it's a little bit the way it's named is a little bit deceptive. So just a little bit of history. You know, this is a program that's done by Federal Highways, and it's really using revenues that Federal Highways is recognizing that the state is obtaining through toll revenues. But essentially what it does, though, is that it allows the state and local governments to replace our local funds with other federal dollars. So that's what we're doing here. We're taking some federal dollars and we're replacing our local funds with those federal dollars. And what that does is that allows us to free up those local funds, and those local funds will be used to directly pay for the gap. So I just want to make it clear that there's no tolling on the gap in El Paso County at this point, and it's not something that advocates for tolling when you're using those toll dollars. Those are dollars that are already essentially credits that are already developed through this program. So we're really just replacing those local dollars with those federal dollars and allowing those to be freed up so that we are able to utilize those for the gap. And so this is a program that doesn't endorse tolling. It's essentially allowing us to use those federal dollars to make those projects 100% federal. So just want to make sure that we're clear. And then second of all, I just want to compliment all the other jurisdictions, our partners that we've been working with at a local level, the other jurisdiction staff. Thank you so much, because I think that hopefully this is a unique thing. This is something that hasn't been really done across the state for, but a lot of local governments are taking advantage of this. And we appreciate all the work that's done by the local staff to make sure that we have I think what I believe and is a win-win situation for the entire region. We're able to move the 30th Street roadway improvements ahead and get those funded, and make sure that Fountain receives additional funding for their projects as well. So I just want to thank all the staffs of all of the member jurisdictions for working on this unique solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate that feedback.
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Bremer.
Okay, hi, go ahead.
Hi. You know, to answer Sharon's question a little more directly, I see this, as everybody else has said, as an acceptance of federal funds. And just like most of our action items with PPACG, that is what we are voting on today. So if I'm not jumping the gun too much, I would propose, and again, this gets to one of Sharon's questions, but I would propose that we do vote on this as a whole, as presented. So I will be happy to make that motion if it's not jumping the gun.
No, I think that's perfect timing. Thank you, Cammie. Is there a second to that motion of approving all of these items as a whole as presented by Catherine?
Yolanda, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second by Yolanda. All those in favor, well, please, if there's any more discussion before we vote. This is complicated. Want to jump the gun? Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any nays? Okay, motion passes. Congratulations to all of us. Okay, we are on to our second action item, which is the 21 through 24 TIP amendment number 5, the TIP programming updates. I believe that is also Catherine.
Yes, thank you. Catherine Winger, planner at PPACG. So This is another amendment to the 21 through 24 tip, and we separated these just to make sure that you understood what's going on in that first section. And this one's a little bit more straightforward and kind of easy to get through. So amendment number 5 is we worked with El Paso County and the TAC members to update our tip document. So we received information from CDOT that said that we were underprogrammed in years 2022, but then overprogrammed in 23 and 24. So some of our projects have a little bit too much money based on our estimated amounts that we should allocations that we would receive each year. And so we needed to update our tip. El Paso County was very nice in allowing us to reduce their amount in 23 and 24 for both STP Metro and TAP funds. But then they would get that money back in fiscal year 22 where we had the extra funds. And so all projects remained whole. We just kind of shifted the funds from those in 2 of their El Paso County projects to make sure that we were fiscally constrained as we're required by the federal government. So you see in your table that it outlines El Paso County's ADA compliance program would shift the funds from their 23 and 24. And then El Paso County's Galley Road projects would shift those funds from 23 and 24 to 2022 for TAP. And I think, yes. So both TAC and CAC recommend approval to the board.
Great. Thank you, Catherine. Are there any questions from board members on this this item, this amendment? If not, I would appreciate a motion to approve.
So moved. This is Sharon.
Sharon.
And this is Stan. I'll second.
Thank you, Stan. Any more discussion on this item? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nays?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Well, okay, well, that concludes our action items. We are on to informational items. We have as our first item the 2020 summer ozone data in the Pikes Peak region. And I see two folks here, Gordon Pierce and Scott Landis. Are both of you here?
Chair, Samantha, so I'm sorry, Samantha Bailey is going to introduce it. If Samantha is in line, go for it.
Of course. Welcome. Good
Hi.
morning.
Yes, hi, good morning, members of the board and Madam Chair. I am Samantha Bailey, the environmental planner for PPACG, charged with monitoring air quality throughout the Pikes Peak region. I hope you all are staying warm during this weird snowy day, but I'm excited to invite the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment to share with you today our regional 2020 summer ozone data. CDPHE has been a wonderful partner to work with, whose data and information is a reflection of the actions that PPACG Air Quality Technical Committee will implement to reduce ozone within our region. At the October Board of Directors meeting, I will bring to you strategies for our first Ozone Advanced program, which includes a variety of proactive projects like implementing air quality curricula in local school districts, creating data visuals, and developing our own air quality notification system throughout our region. So at this point, I'd like to introduce you to our partners at CDPHE, Gordon Pierce, Program Manager for the Air Quality Control Division, and Scott Lands, Supervisor for the Meteorology and Prescribed Fire Unit within the Air Quality Control Division.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Good morning. This is Gordon Pierce. So I'm going to go ahead and start the presentation. I'll share my screen here. And then, so I'll be doing part of it, and then Scott Landis will be taking over. And hope people can see the screen.
We can.
There we go. So as Samantha mentioned, and thank you, Samantha, wanted to give you an update on what's been happening with ozone this year in Colorado Springs. And it has, it's been quite an interesting year, to be quite honest. So just to start out, as we know, air respects no boundaries. And that became quite evident this summer with all the wildfires and all the smoke influences into the area. So ozone standards and health effects. I'm going to focus on the standards here. There's two standards that are currently in effect. A 2015 standard of 70 parts per billion, and then an older 2008 standard of 75 parts per billion. They're both defined as the 3-year average of the daily fourth maximum 8-hour values that are truncated, not rounded. And certainly for the Denver North Front Range non-attainment area, both standards are in effect. We are currently under non-attainment, currently classified as serious for the 2008 standard and marginal for the newer 2015 standard. One thing to note is that EPA has been reviewing the standards, the 2015 standard, as part of their 5-year review cycle, and they do have a proposal out at the moment to retain the standard at the same level. So that's out for comment at the moment in the Federal Register if people are interested. As far as ozone formation, ozone is a little different, and it's not directly emitted. It's secondarily formed through VOCs and oxides of nitrogen reacting in sunlight. So it makes it quite difficult to control. Most of the emissions that we look at are coming from motor vehicles, industry, oil and gas production, certainly in the North Front Range, and then also biogenic vegetation, for instance, produces a lot of VOCs. And it isn't just a linear relationship. You can actually reduce NOx, for instance, and in some cases you can get an increase in ozone, and the same with VOCs. So that also makes it difficult to control. An updated inventory from what was presented previously, and you can look at this more in detail later at your leisure, but this is from the 2017 National Emissions Inventory. And you can see there for the NOx column that most of the NOx is from highway vehicles. And for VOCs, the bulk is from, for the Colorado Springs, the Pikes Peak area, which includes El Paso and Teller counties. The VOCs are primarily from natural or biogenic sources and highway vehicles. So the two sites that we currently have in operation, I think as everyone knows, is the Air Force Academy, and then the one that was put in a little more recently was Manitou Springs. And now to get into the data. So this is just a graphical representation of the 3-hour averages for 2018 through end of August of 2020. So not the full year yet of 2020, but certainly encompasses a lot of the summer. And as you can see, the Denver and North Front Range area, a lot of that is in red, so above the level of the 2015 standard of 70 parts per billion. And at the moment, because of what happened this summer, Colorado Springs is not attaining the standard either. Western slope of Colorado is all fine. So these are the values for the last 3 years. So the top chart area is including all of what we had as what we consider exceptional events this year. And a lot of that was really related to wildfire smoke, and I'll get into that into a couple of slides. But you can see things were running along in the low 70s to into the mid 60s as far as the fourth maximum 8-hour values. And then this year they've gone up to the upper 70s. And so that's pushed the 3-year average over.
Madam Chair,
if you do take out,
yeah, can you change the display so what we're seeing is the slide you're talking about, and the next slide is showing up there, and it's making them both too small to read.
Yeah, your
okay.
presentation format, so it's showing both slides.
Yes.
Good point. Maybe Andy should wear glasses. But...
Yeah, I'm trying to wear my special computer glasses, but it's not working.
Try to see how to do that on this.
Where you had your cursor, this is Stan. Just go to the right one, which is the 3 dots. There may be other options there, so check that.
Yeah, there may be more.
Full screen or
you go to display settings.
Yeah, I think it's under display settings.
Yeah, click there.
This is great. PowerPoint by committee. Always
I
works.
know.
Yes.
Killing me.
There we go. Is that better?
Nope.
Swap preventer views. Click there.
There you go.
There we
You
go.
got it. Perfect.
Okay. Okay. So yeah. So as you can see in the lower part, I've excluded what we would consider as exceptional events for this year. There were some exceptional events in 2018 as well. I didn't worry about those. I just left those out. And so this is just looking at excluding 2020 events. And as you can see, the fourth max values drop down into the mid 60s. And so that puts the 3-year average at below 70. So moving on to the next slide, just looking at trends. Even with events included, there is a slight downward trend still. You do see this cyclical nature that we see along the Front Range that's based on meteorological patterns.
And Gordon, my apologies, just to interrupt. You may have solved the visual problem for others, but right now all I can see is a little rectangle of the middle of the screen on my screen. So
Concur.
Okay.
There you go.
There you go.
There we go. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. We'll get this sorted out. You can see that in the 2018 to 2020 in the larger graph, how that goes way up. And if you go by the sort of the typical pattern, we would likely have expected it to be lower this year. And if we took out the exceptional events, it would have been. And you can see where the standards have dropped over the years. The bottom smaller right-hand slide, you can see where this year is really truly abnormal with the way the values have gone way up for the fourth maximum values. And then getting more into specific on the exceptional events, you'll notice a lot of W's in these two tables, and those are all events that were influenced by wildfire smoke. For ozone, wildfires, we see stratospheric ozone intrusions as exceptional events, and you can see a few of those on here. Those typically occur more in the spring time frame. And then wildfire smoke can also increase ozone, especially when it's transported from further distances. And in the case of August, we had not only had smoke from Colorado, but also a lot of smoke coming in from California. So, and this aged smoke in particular, where you've got all the VOCs in that are from the smoke and all the NOx that's been as part of the combustion process. With aged smoke, those have had time to react and form ozone. So it really can increase ozone. And we actually saw, even in Western Colorado, we saw on these same days, mid to late August, we saw higher values than we've seen, to be quite honest, for, in some cases, decades at some of the sites. So it truly has been kind of an exceptional year, and that really has caused a lot of higher ozone events in Colorado Springs. So you can see where what's highlighted in yellow would be the fourth maximum values, or if you take out the events, the fourth max values would be highlighted in green. We're still investigating 827, so that's just a question mark. So I included that as part of the fourth maxes. But even if you did take that out, it really wouldn't change things much as far as an adjusted fourth max value.
And Gordon,
So,
this is
exceptional
Commissioner
events.
Stan. My apologies. In the Clean Air Act, there is an exceptional events rule. Perhaps you're going to get to it, that allows cities to seek exemptions if that they can show that the
Yes.
source of the bad air quality is coming from somewhere else that's outside the city's control. So are you going to speak to that a little bit? Because I don't know how much of this is outside of our control, coming from other places, a fire on the Western Slope, a fire from California. And I also know that I don't know if it goes all the way to Colorado, but I know that the Western coast states are highly impacted from ozone generated from China. So I don't know if we're going to have a conversation about that or not.
Yeah, I wasn't planning on the China aspect, but yeah, we do get ozone coming in from overseas. That's a different section of the Clean Air Act. Section 179B addresses international transport. We were looking at looking at that as a possibility for the Denver North Front Range area. But Governor Polis made the decision a few years ago that we really didn't want to do that, and we wanted to make sure we kept on focusing on reducing the local problems and trying to reduce ozone. Exceptional events are covered under, and you can see on this slide, under Section 40 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 50.14. So an exceptional event is one that that affects air quality in a way that there exists a clear causal relationship, so and that it's not reasonably controllable or preventable. And we certainly see stratospheric ozone and these wildfire smoke influenced events as being exceptional. So there's two steps to the process, really. One is we have to flag the data, what we consider to be exceptional. We flag that in EPA's air quality system. And there's two types of flags. One are just informational, and then another flag is that we are going to submit a demonstration for the event. And we can change from one flag to the other if needed. So typically what we do at the end of the season, typically actually after the end of the calendar year, is we will go back and review the whole season. Once all the data are validated, we'll make decisions at that time as to what we're going to flag in AQS, and then whether a demonstration will be developed to submit to EPA, and then EPA has to concur on that demonstration. When they do, they add a flag in AQS, and the events are then officially concurred and would not be considered as part of the 3-year calculations. So at this point, we have not made any decisions as to whether we're going to be developing any demonstrations to submit to EPA. EPA typically does redesignations when they review the standards, since they're basically at the end of their review. I don't even know if they would consider this year until another 5 years from now. So there's a number of things that go into play. So decisions that are going to be made in, at a later stage here. So does that address your question?
Yes, I think you. Thank you, Gordon. I think so. It sounds to me, if I understand correctly, this is still potentially in play, but perhaps not in the next few months per se. And then maybe there's even some action that might be taken from the EPA that just might preclude some of the unusual conditions that are taking place in 2020 because of all of these fires and so forth. So they might maybe make their own determination about that, if I understood correctly.
Yes. And so, so we'll, like I said, we will be making decisions later time frame. EPA used to have a 3-year window in which you had to submit demonstrations. They removed that from the Federal Register a few years ago, so there is no time frame. So we're under no specific under the gun to get this done at all. So we'll make informed decisions as needed, and certainly we'll be working through the PPACG on this as well.
Thank you.
So with that, I will stop my sharing, and we'll turn this over to Scott Landis for the rest of the presentation.
Norm has a question first. Go ahead, Norm.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Gordon, I was really looking forward to your presentation. This is Norm Steen, Teller County Commissioner. Because I was expecting a significant drop in NOx because of the significant drop in highway traffic, lower traffic, lower NOx, lower ozone. That's not what we saw today. I'd be interested in your comments on the correlation between highway traffic, which has dropped probably by 50% or more during the summer months, and the rise of ozone. It seems to be illogical.
Yeah, and Scott will be talking about this a little more. Yeah, we certainly saw I haven't, I know Scott's looked at the Colorado Springs area. From what I've been looking at in the Denver area, we certainly saw a definite drop in NOx emissions. And a lot of that really is vehicle related, plus some industry related as well. As I mentioned earlier, the relationship between VOCs and NOx in ozone formation isn't a linear relationship. And so you can, whether you're considered a NOx limited area or a VOC limited area, just the way the chemistry works, you can decrease one of them and actually get an increase in ozone. So that's, I think, part of why we may not be seeing a big drop in ozone that correlates with it. It's just not it's not a straightforward, easy one to deal with that way.
So as we look at mitigation efforts to control ozone, are you suggesting that drop in vehicle traffic or vehicle emissions is not a significant factor? That regardless of what we do with emissions, it's not a factor on decreasing ozone? Or significant as we thought?
Typically, typically urban areas are considered more VOC limited, so which means if you reduce VOCs, you're likely to reduce ozone more. Because you can reduce the NOx, but there's still plenty of VOCs for the reaction to occur. That being said, with motor vehicles, you get both VOCs and NOx coming out of the tailpipe. So I think they are still an effective mitigation strategy, is to reduce motor vehicle emissions as much as possible.
Well, I'm concluding it's less effective than what we thought. The lever isn't as powerful as I first believed, but I'll go ahead and look forward to Scott's presentation. Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome.
Hey, thanks, Gordon, and good morning, everybody. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Let's see if I can do this here. Host disabled participant screen sharing. Is there somebody could enable my screen sharing? Is that possible?
Jessica?
Give it a try now.
Okay. Let's see. And how's that?
There it is. We got it. Thank you, Scott.
Great. Okay. Well, again, thank you for giving me the opportunity, and Gordon as well, to present. Before I get into the meat of the presentation, just wanted to do a little reminder to folks to how you can get your air quality alerts for the Pikes Peak area. There's really two options: the EPA's website, enviroflash.info. What that's going to give you is a today and tomorrow forecast for the Colorado Springs area for ozone and fine particulates. You'll get those 365 days a year. Now, if you're interested in getting the advisories that we issue, and we've issued, I think, for the Pikes Peak area, 13 or 14 alerts so far just this summer. You can go to our website and you can sign up for the email alerts, and you'd want to sign up for the Colorado.air quality email list. Previously, Colorado Springs was kind of lumped in with the Denver, Boulder, Fort Collins area for ozone alerts, but we did get some concerns that you're getting too many emails. A lot of times we'd have the high ozone in Denver, not necessarily in Colorado Springs, but you were still getting those alerts. So to kind of remove some of that confusion, we now have Colorado Springs as a separate area for our alerts, and they will get those alerts on the Colorado.air quality email list. So you can go to our website and sign up for those. Next slide here. Okay, so let me talk. We're doing a couple of different analyses for the technical services program related to air pollution and impacts from COVID-19. Gordon's been working quite a bit on one analysis, and it's a really, it's an analysis that looks at a number of pollutants around the Denver metropolitan area: nitrogen dioxide, NOx, SO2, carbon monoxide, and particulates. And more of a broad short-term analysis. It's looking at this year versus last year. And in general, we're seeing a drop in all pollutants, of course, to different degrees. For some, we're seeing smaller decreases, 5, 10%. But for some pollutants, such as SO2, we are seeing decreases of 50% plus from 2019 to 2020. Now, I've been working on a little different analysis for the entire Northern Front Range region, including the Pikes Peak area. And my analysis is looking at a little bit longer of a time frame. So for the Pikes Peak area, I'm looking at PM 2.5 at Colorado College, sulfur dioxide at Highway 24, and also ozone at the two sites, the Air Force Academy and at Manitou Springs. And again, this is a little bit longer time frame that I'm looking at. So basically what I'm doing is I'm comparing 2020, or the COVID year, to 2010 versus 2019 to see if there's been any really noticeable changes. Now, for the pollutants, I looked at two different calendar periods. For fine particulates and sulfur dioxide, I started my analysis on March 16th. So I believe the emergency declaration was on March 10th. I know for myself, I really started working from home on that Monday, March 16th. So I said, that's probably a fairly effective time to at least start this analysis. And I've run it throughout the summer up until August 31st. Ozone, I did things a little bit differently. I started the analysis on June 1st, and I did that through August 31st. And the reason for that, that's the high ozone season, for the Pikes Peak area. If you start looking at ozone before June 1st, you start getting stratospheric intrusions. And intrusions are basically where the good ozone that's high up in the atmosphere comes down to the surface and really affects our surface ozone. And it really has nothing to do whatsoever with any changes in human activity. So in my opinion, I thought that was going to muddy the water somewhat if we're trying to look at a COVID-19 analysis when you start looking at these intrusions. So basically, I started it at the beginning of the high ozone season, June 1st through August 31st. Gordon went through a number of these slides, PM 2.5.
Can I have a quick question on that?
Sure.
Yeah, going back on that stratospheric, this is Andy Pico. The stratospheric conversions still happen in the summer, do they not?
They become much less frequent. I think usually by the time we hit the middle part of June, the stratospheric intrusions pretty much go away. They're usually associated with strong cold fronts. And once we hit the summer months, those cold fronts kind of migrate, or I guess I could say migrate back northward with the jet stream up into Canada. So the typical stratospheric intrusion season is April, especially through May, and then it starts winding down in June. So it's hard to pick a date when, okay, this is when stratospheric intrusions end, but June 1st is typically the beginning of our ozone season. So that's when I started my analysis.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. Again, PM 2.5, Gordon went through this. Black carbon from combustion can be a significant contributor to primary PM 2.5. One of the wild cards, though, of PM 2.5 are natural sources. Dust, but especially wildfire smoke, as we certainly experienced over the past six weeks or so. Natural sources can contribute roughly 10%, but can be much, much higher. And again, that's what we've seen over the past few weeks with that wildfire smoke. And I'll talk a little bit more about that coming up here. So let's start off by looking at Colorado College. And this is the line graph from March 16th through August 31st. And you can see there is a fairly gradual downward trend to the slope. But you do see that kind of jump up there in 2020 from a fairly low number that we had in 2019. But this is from March 16th through August 31st. And again, we had that wild card in here for much of August, wildfire smoke. So I wanted to take a look and see, what does this line graph look like if I shorten that time span from March 16th to August 3rd? So around August 4th is when the Front Range really started getting impacted by wildfire smoke from smoke from the western slope, and then eventually from out-of-state fires as well. So I want you to focus on the right-hand side of this line graph for 2020, and you'll see, boom, how quickly far it goes down if we eliminate those wildfire smoke episodes. And I think that's probably a little better indication of what kind of changes we've seen as a result to COVID-19. It can't all be contributed to the changes in human activity for COVID-19. There's always those natural sources that come along with PM 2.5. But I think you can see there's certainly a significant downward trend in PM 2.5 over the past decade. So here are the numbers behind these trends. The daily average for 2010 through 2019 for PM 2.5 at Colorado College, 6.21 micrograms per cubic meter, and that dropped about 10.4% if we look at the 2020 numbers. SO2, highly reactive gas, power plants, industrial facilities emit. We've seen some dramatic changes in SO2 that have nothing to do with COVID-19, more so with some of the new controls that were put on Drake. You can see that really significant drop in the 2016, 2017 time period. And then we've kind of set a new standard to what SO2 is here in the Pikes Peak area. If you look at 2020 though, we did drop off even further, a fairly significant drop. So I'm not going to compare 2020 to 2013 through 2019 because those numbers prior to 2017 really aren't relevant anymore to what we're looking at. So if I look at the 2017 to 2019 time period, which is kind of the new standard for SO2 here in the Pikes Peak area, and then compare that to 2020, you can still see a significant drop. It's dropped 52.7% here in 2020. And I do think that at least part of that, hard to determine how much, but part of that is due to the decrease in human activity because of the pandemic. Ozone is the very complicated one, as Gordon was saying. It's made up from NOx and VOCs, not a linear relationship. You change one, you still might see rises or decreases in ozone. Then you've got that wild card of wildfire smoke coming into it. So very difficult to really evaluate, but we'll take a look at the numbers. And Air Force Academy, this is from, again, looking at the high ozone season, June 1st to August 31st. The curve is pretty flat. There are some pretty big years as you go back in the early part of the decade, 2011 to 2013, and we haven't seen numbers like that recently. Even with the wildfire enhanced ozone we saw here for 2020, it still kind of fits in the curve here for that 2015 to 2020 time period of being relatively flat. But I want to do the same thing because ozone is so highly impacted by wildfire smoke. I want to look and see what the curve was if we kind of subtracted these wildfire events we saw in August. So again, I ask you to kind of direct your attention to the right-hand side of this curve, and you see that drop again. The concentrations in ozone, when you subtract this big wildfire ozone event, it kind of shows that we are seeing more of a downward trend in ozone. And again, very hard to evaluate how much of this has to do with the pandemic with COVID-19, but my guess is at least a portion of that decrease is because of that. Manitou Springs is very similar. Again, if you look at the June 1st through August 31st time period for that decade, relatively flat. Take out the wildfire events and you see a much steeper drop here as we go into the 2020 time period. So looking at the numbers, Air Force Academy, long-term trend versus 2020, very mild decrease of about 0.6%. However, if we remove those smoke events, that decrease goes to 7.2%. Manitou Springs, very similar, 1.4% drop in 2020. However, with that minus those smoke events, we're at a 6.6% decrease over the long-term average.
This is Commissioner Stan with a question.
Sure.
I don't know if you can go back a couple of charts, but there's some of it's kind of the line charts.
Let me see.
Didn't mean to do that.
That's okay. Which chart were you?
Any one of them for the ozone.
Okay. Let me try that again here. Sorry about that. Is that
yeah, that'll be good enough. So I think this is the one before you took out the fire concentration, but there's another interesting thing in here, and I'm curious if you have any comments to it. From 2015 to 2020, there seems to be kind of a slow upward trend, and there's a peak in 15. And then I guess if you take the fires out, we've got 2 years of having a decrease. Is there anything that we can correlate to that kind of an upward trend from I'm sorry, a peak in 18, an upward trend from 14 to 18? Was that, and over the last 2 years, has it been decreasing because we've taken some kind of specific action, or do we maybe not know why we've had the upward trend and then 2 years of downward?
So let me go to the next, let me go to this slide where I take out those wildfire events. And yeah, you're looking at the 2014, 2015 were pretty low. Those were pretty wet years. I think meteorology had more of an impact there in 2014 and 2015 than anything else. And then if you look at 2018, that was another big wildfire season for us. That was the year we had the big fire out by Durango. We had a lot of fires coming from the Pacific Northwest. So, you know, in general, you're going to have the meteorology and these natural events are going to impact these ozone concentrations. Trying to parse that out to find out, you know, where do we stand as far as, you know, decreasing emissions and seeing drops in ozone. I think with that, you have to look at the much longer term trends. You have to go back, you know, to 2010 and even before that. And when you do look at that, you do see a very gradual drop. And I think that is going to be more indicative of what changes we've made as far as anthropogenic emissions.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that, because it seems like, wow, I didn't realize it until you explained it. There can be quite a lot of variability due to issues outside our control relating to weather, extra moisture, lots of fires, whatever it is. That's interesting.
Exactly, yes.
Thanks.
This is Gordon. Scott, if you could go back to slide 9.
Okay.
And I think this indicates that as well, especially if you look at the lower right-hand slide, which is just the fourth max values. Scott's using the average of everything. This is just the highest fourth max value for the year. But as I was mentioning, we do see this kind of cyclical, and you do see that same increase from about 2014 up through 2018. And then it dropped in 2019 and would have actually dropped a little more if you took out the events here in 2020. So, and we know, we see the same type of cyclical pattern in the Denver North Front Range area as well. Not so much on the West Slope, but it seems to be, and Scott can correct me on this, but somewhat related to the La Nina, El Nino patterns.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Okay, so there's silence. Are you done with your presentation? I'm not.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, I welcome any questions.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the board?
I have a question about the alerts, the
Okay.
air quality alerts.
Okay, go ahead, Sharon.
Okay, we used to just get them on up.
You're really cutting out, Sharon.
And I think that is really important for PPACG, and I have a really bad connection. I don't. I have a question about the alerts we used to receive on our phones, like automatically without having to go and sign up anywhere for the air quality alerts. Is that something that's going to come back for the average user? That like last, just a couple days ago when the smoke was so bad, there was no alert that came out automatically in your phone.
Okay.
So our the advisories we send out our email strictly. We haven't been able to get to the point where we can start sending texts and alerts on cell phones, which I would love to get to at some point, but we're not there yet. You might be talking about Air Now, EPA's alerts. I believe they can be sent via the cell phone via alert, and those are the same. Those haven't changed. Now, as far as Monday is concerned, and this might be I know we're probably short on time, but a good learning opportunity for how we make our decisions about issuing advisories. Is it okay if I talked about that for a couple minutes?
We really are rushed, but yes,
okay.
Let's try to move it along. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so in a nutshell, Labor Day, I was on duty looking at the entire state, started looking at things at about 6 o'clock in the morning, issued a number of advisories, and unfortunately the meteorology and the smoke really became incredibly complex and did things I did not expect to happen. And we got a big dose of smoke here in the Colorado Springs area around 4 p.m., right before the cold front came through and cleaned things out. So I take full responsibility for the alert not being issued on that. It's incredibly difficult to kind of forecast smoke, wildfire smoke, and where it's going to go. And that, so we evaluated the whole state, Pikes Peak region. It was just a forecast that I wish I could go back and change. So
well, it didn't last long.
Thankfully. thankfully.
Okay, quick comment from Andy.
Great presentation. Thank you. I appreciate the difficulties of the air quality alerts, but I also want to take the opportunity to thank you because breaking apart the Colorado Springs from the Denver, the Northern Corridor was an issue that came up at PPACG. And that was something that we engaged in and got that sorted out. So I just want to thank you all and give you a compliment. And so far as missing a forecast, I don't think we'll ever hold any forecaster to account for that one.
I completely agree, and I am grateful for all that you guys are doing to support our air quality. I do want to continue, though, as PPACG leaders to be cognizant and continue to support efforts to reduce greenhouse emissions, and especially from our transportation efforts. I heard just today that even while we're moving to e-vehicles, that our heavier and heavier vehicles leave more tire particles and road particles in our air that are actually very harmful to us, and we're doing nothing to reduce those kinds of particle emissions that are, completely separate from greenhouse gases, but they're still caused by people using our roads, whether they're e-vehicles or not. So I continue to try to move those issues forward. Other comments?
Yeah, John, one. Scott, well, I'll mention this in just a bit when I talk about the staff report, but we have a new chairperson of the statewide Transportation Advisory Committee. Her name is Karen Stewart, a Denver centric person, and her focus on the coming year as chairman of the Transportation Commission. They govern transportation spending policy statewide. They own the checkbook. And her focus will be on greenhouse gas emissions. So, I'm still taken by the relative impact of rainfall, meteorology, versus the anthropogenic causes that you talked about, the relationship or the influence of the two. Rainfall has a much greater impact on many of the pollutants than human activity. So I'm wondering if at some point, or have you already made a presentation to CDOT headquarters, any plans in the future? And I'd particularly like to see you get in front of the Transportation Commission with this presentation in perhaps greater detail statewide.
Sure. Yeah, I'd welcome that opportunity. When it comes to greenhouse gases, and Gordon might be able to elaborate on this more than I. They've established a new greenhouse gas group that works specifically on greenhouse gases. So I assume that those are the kind of presentations they'll be giving as well. But I'd be happy to present my analysis at any point, to anybody who might be interested in that.
And this is Gordon. Clay Clark is the supervisor for our greenhouse gas unit in the Air Pollution Control Division. So I think he should definitely be in touch with Karen as far as the transportation side.
Okay. I would just urge you to reach out and make that contact. Maybe she's already made a contact, and that's why it's moved to the top of the list.
It could be.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, other questions? Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, I am looking at our agenda. Our next item is the mobility coordination draft plan.
Laura Kilpatrick will handle that one. Laura Cruz, go for it.
Yes, I am on here. Jespy, can you let me share my screen?
Yep, 1 second. Okay, give it a try now.
Okay. Good morning, and thank you for letting me join you this morning. I just want to tell everybody that this is my first snow in 10 years, so that's exciting.
I'm so glad to be back in Colorado. So this is a quick overview. Last month, you guys approved for us to move forward in the process of securing the designated recipient status of the FTA 5310 funds. So that is a transfer of funding through FTA from MMT, who has been administering the program for several years, to now PPACG. And so with you guys approving that, we have moved forward. We have sent a letter to the governor requesting that designated recipient status to be transferred over to us. So that is one step. The second step is putting together a program management plan. And so the program management plan just details how we're going to manage the funds and how we are going to administer that in our community. And so the 5310 funds is mostly going to be utilized in the Colorado Springs urbanized area. So it has to be used for the Colorado Springs urbanized area. 5311 funds are utilized outside of that whole area. So we are working on that program management plan. We have put together a draft, which has been presented to you guys in your packet. There are a few things that we're working on. I was in contact with FTA yesterday, still working out some of the details that will go into that program management plan. But what we would like to do today is to request from the board to allow us to present this plan to the general public for a public comment period starting October 1st. So we're just asking for you guys to approve that so that we can move forward to a 30-day public comment period. That will allow us to get input from committees such as the RAC, the TAC, the CAC, and you guys in having some feedback on how we're going to administer that moving forward. So if y'all have any questions regarding the document that we sent, the draft, just please let me know, and I'll turn it over to you guys.
Questions from the board? Okay, thank you very much.
One quick, Jill, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Norm.
Do we expect this to be an action item before the board on the recommendation of those committees, or what's the path forward on this process, or is it done?
Good question.
That's a great question. So once we are opening it up for public comment period, two things will happen. The committees will be able to view this document. They'll be able to look over it, make recommendations. One in particular committee that is important to us is the Mobility Coordinating Committee, the MCC. And so during that period, also FTA will be making recommendations. So it'll go through two reviews from FTA. Then a comprehensive document that has been approved by FTA will be presented to the board for the board to approve overall of how we're going to administer the program.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions before we move on? Okay. Let's move on to our third informational item, which is the timeline for the evaluation of our executive director.
Morning. Can
Good
you?
morning.
Hi, Barb Watson, PPACG HR Manager. So the timeline was in your board packet, so I'll briefly go over what the timeline will be. At the next meeting in October, you will get a copy of the evaluation. The board members will get a copy of the evaluation. And I ask that you return it to me by the end of October so that I can tally the results and have it available to board members for the November meeting. So at the November board meeting, we typically go into closed executive session so that the evaluation results can be discussed. that the results of the 2020 performance, setting goals for 2021, and then a proposed salary for 2021, and any bonus for 2020 will be proposed. And then before the December board meeting, when approval is made of the actions proposed in the November board meeting, the board chair and myself will get together and draft a memorandum that will be approved at the December board meeting by the board members. Are there any questions?
Questions from the board? I appreciate that, and Barb, it's very helpful.
We had a fairly good response last year from board members.
Yes, we did.
In evaluations, right?
Thank you, Sharon. We're still just kind of getting every, I don't know, other word. So you know.
I said, I think we had a fairly good response last year from board members sending in their evaluations. I hope that continues again this year.
We did. Thank you, Sharon, for bringing up that point. Evaluating the executive director and giving him directions and input on his goals for 2020 and setting goals for 2020 is very important. So I hope that all board members will be encouraged and to complete the evaluation. Thank you.
And this is Commissioner Stan. I'll just echo the chair's comments. Thanks, Barb, for helping to set the stage so that we've got a path forward that we all know.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Stan. Any other questions? Okay, we will move on to our discussion, preliminary budget discussion. I think for 2021, Casey is here.
Yes, good morning, Jill. This is Casey Partridge, Finance Manager. Wanted to go over the item 7A, which is our information and discussion of our upcoming 2021 budget. Managers have been busy working on their budget, as well as finance staff and administration staff. And these are some of the highlights of what we're looking at for our 2021 budget, and we'll have any discussion and direction. Some of the noteworthy things that are happening is the Joint Land Use Implementation Grant is scheduled to end on December 31st, 2020. So the end of this year is when it was scheduled to end. We've been given an extension and expect our funding to last through February of 2021. We are also budgeting for a new JLUS grant to work with the community and are looking for a grant from 2021 through December 21st is what we're going to be budgeting for. This grant is expected to double the revenue of the current grant, with the majority being used for contract services. And I think they're looking at some grants for water issues and things like that, and working with the different jurisdictions. Our Area Agency on Aging 2021 award increased by less than 1% over the 1920 award. However, this is for a 10-month grant period instead of the normal 12-month. So we are actually looking at an increase. And that 1% increase did not include the federal COVID relief funding that we've received. And we currently have about $1.3 million remaining and have until September 2021 to use those funds. And Jody's looking at different ways that we can help the community and different service organizations by different awards. We anticipate a 15% increase for health insurance with a 3% increase in dental and vision. We're currently working with our broker on our insurance benefits to see if we can get those rates down and what we can do to improve those overall percentages. We are budgeting or looking at a budget right now of an overall increase in salary and fringe, with those increases in benefits of about a 1.44%, with over 90% of this coming directly from the grants that we receive. This includes a 2.8% salary pool increase and salary adjustments for a few of our employees. This percentage comes from a recommendation from Employers Council where we work with, and they've given us a range, and we've kind of gone with the middle range on that one. We did decrease our FTEs in 2020 from 36 FTEs to 35.5. We eliminated a full-time position this year and replaced it with a half-time position. Managers are looking at areas to reduce expenses, including expenses that rely exclusively on dues usage. We're looking at increasing our in-kind donations to use as required match for grants. The majority of our dues are used for match for our grants, and so if we can use in-kind funding for that, we're looking at ways to do that. We are not anticipating any major capital expenditures for 2021. This will help lessen the impact on local dues. However, we are budgeting for the $20,000 for the state lobbyist, which comes directly out of our local dues. We will be bringing the full budget to the board in October as a presentation, and then coming back to the board in November with a request to approve. Do I have any questions?
Any questions for Casey?
I have one. Sorry, Joe? You know what?
Norm, go ahead.
Casey, on the use of in-kind donations, I just want to clarify. I think you mean that in-kind donations from PPACG. You're not looking for the jurisdictions to make in-kind donations to PPACG as a replacement for payment of our dues. You're trying
Correct.
to reduce reliance on the existing dues.
Yeah, we use in-kind donations if we can get donations. If an example in the past, we've used PPRTA products that they've paid for that we've needed for our transportation program. We can use those as in-kind. Our volunteers in our AAA program, JLU's is looking at some new in-kind donations and getting to some donations from other contractors and things for some of their match requirements. So if we get it from somebody else, then we can use that as match. And each of our grants have different requirements as to what's allowed for in-kind. So we work with each grant that we receive to be able to use those.
You're not looking for counties, for example, to make an in-kind donation as a replacement for payment of our dues.
Correct.
It's not what you're saying.
Right. We still are looking. We've given those dues out in the last couple months, and hopefully you still have those. We can. It was also attached as an attachment as to what the billing will look like in as of January 1 for each of the entities.
Right. Good job at creative financial work. Thank you.
Well said, Norm. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I could though, but to that point, we also do want to know, as Casey mentioned, we've handed out the dues sheet for 2021 a couple of times now, and we want to know earlier rather than later if that is going to be a challenge for any of the local jurisdictions, just given where you are financially planning for next year. I shared this with the city, town, and county managers as well to get feedback from them to see if they have any concerns about meeting that obligation next year. So as Casey mentioned, we're going to put it all together and bring a full draft budget to the board next month. So the sooner we know if there are going to be some issues in meeting those targets for next year, the better, so we can start planning for other contingencies and so forth. So yeah, just appreciate any feedback you can offer.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. Any other questions, concerns, comments right now from our jurisdictions or just the budget? Okay, well, we can move on to reports then. Starting with our military installation reports. I saw a few. Is Ron still on the phone from Schriever?
Yes, Ron Jeffrey.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, board members. As a reminder, back on the 24th of July, Space Force went through a major reorganization, and now the Peterson-Schriever Garrison Command has installation command responsibility for 6 major installations to include Peterson Air Force Base, Schriever Air Force Base, in Cheyenne Mountain Air Force Station. So we're pressing ahead with meeting all the installation needs of our mission partners and tenants. In an update from Space Force, September 1st marked the first date that officer and enlisted space operators were able to transfer into the Space Force. The Peterson-Schriever Garrison supported ceremonies across our installations from the Delta level, which is a wing equivalent command, to squadrons. On 15 September, there'll also be another large swearing-in ceremony conducted by General Raymond, the Chief of Space Operations for the U.S. Space Force, as part of the Air Force Association's annual meeting, where folks will be able to participate virtually, and we're identifying those participants now across our installations. Applications inside career fields common to both the Air Force and Space Force will begin transferring into the Space Force in February of 2021. So there's many more transfers from the Air Force to the Space Force that will occur in the future. Many of you may have heard that the motto Semper Supra, always above, and the logo, the Space Delta, were released to the public by U.S. Space Force on the 22nd of July. So many things coming together as this young military service moves forward. Looking at COVID, within our garrison community, we're still at health protection condition Bravo in phase 2 of our recovery plan. We've noted that the number of folks who are testing positive continues to trend downward, much like the surrounding communities. And we don't see any data that shows we need to change our approach. One of the benefits that we certainly enjoy is greater ability to telework, especially in situations like we face right now with the weather situation. So certainly a way for us to make sure we continue to accomplish the missions, even facing COVID and other weather-related challenges. One other item I wanted to note is that our Honor Guard team received approval in August to return to a 7-member team, allowing them to perform full military funeral honors in our community. This update allows the team to provide support to families who have fallen retirees, general officers, and active duty members, in order for the military members to receive the honors that they've earned through their service. One final note, at Cheyenne Mountain in June, Cheyenne Mountain completed the construction of their new helicopter landing pad. The FAA provided approval in August, and the pad will go into effect this month. The structure provides a dedicated landing area for combatant commanders and other high-ranking officials who would use Cheyenne Mountain during a crisis situation or during exercises. Unless there's any questions, those are the items that I wanted to highlight at this meeting.
Thank you, Ron. That's a lot of great information. Are there any questions from the board? Okay. Our other military institutions, thank you. I saw Mike Schaefer earlier from Peterson. Anyone else from our military installations?
Jill, this is Mike Schaefer. Mike Schaefer at Peterson. Ron covered everything that needed to be covered.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Mike. Anyone from the Air Force Academy? Okay, going. Let's see. We're not going to have reports from CAC, TAC, or MAC, or RAC. So I guess we're on to CDOT, and Shane is here.
Good morning. I know Rich is on, and I'm going to turn it over to Rich here briefly.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to get myself unmuted.
We hear you.
Dang it.
Yep, you're good, Rich.
All right, you can hear me?
You're good.
Okay, I apologize. So yeah, just a couple of very, very quick things. So I'm not sure if this group is aware, but we did receive a letter from Woodland Park from Mayor Carr. indicating that the city council had unanimously passed a resolution asking CDOT to look at constructing a reliever route for US 24 and converting the existing US 24 into more of a business kind of route. So we just got that letter late last week. We're going to be working on a response to Woodland Park, but it's also going to be, we're going to have to be working very closely with Pikes Peak Area COG to talk about where that falls in terms of priorities and those kinds of things. The only other couple of brief things to really mention right now is, STAC is tomorrow. And then we also have our normal monthly Transportation Commission meetings next week. So other than that, I really don't have anything else unless anybody has any specific questions for me.
Any questions for Rich?
Rich Stack is Friday, not tomorrow, right?
Oh, sorry. Lost track of days. Working from home is, you forget what day of the week it is. Apologize.
Yeah.
Understandable. September 11th.
Yep. All right. With that, I'm just going to turn it over to Shane to do some project updates as well. So.
Great. Thank you, Rich.
So just briefly, just a few project updates. I'll start with the MAMSIP, the Military Access Mobility and Safety Improvement Project. We did successfully negotiate and work through issues and pricing for our first package on that, the State Highway 94 passing lanes and fiber installation with the contractor. We're currently working through our contract mechanism right now and hope to, fingers crossed, we'll see some groundbreaking here towards the end of the month. Out there or first part of October. So good success for the CDOT team and all involved with that piece of the project. And so we're moving forward. The next update will be the cable rail project on I-25 that's continuing. We've added the additional 1.5 miles to the south end of the project. It's all about 5 miles total south of Fountain. So that project will continue on. We'll likely see that project wrap up towards the end of November, first part of December. With that, the remaining parts or the remaining projects that we have in the area are, for the most part, wrapping up. Successful construction season. The projects on 24 wrapping up, the ones out east, 94 and 24 as well. And the project up north with the developer is continuing through the winter. The North Cape Interchange project that will continue on. We've seen a number of bridge or girder settings happen over the past month and a half, and we'll continue to see that as that project progresses. So outside of that, are there any questions for construction projects or for me?
Questions for Shane? Projects? Lots going on, even as the snow falls.
The snow falls, right. All right, thank you guys.
Thank you, Shane. Appreciate everything you do. Okay, that does bring us to STAC, which is this Friday.
Yes, it is. Good morning, everybody. Just a couple updates from our STAC meeting. It was almost a month ago now. As you know, we adjusted the STAC timeline to the second week. So a couple highlights. I did mention that Karen Stewart, former mayor of Broomfield, is now the chairman of STAC. She outlined a couple visionary steps. One is to look at the funding plan for the next 10 years, and then a really much increased focus on greenhouse gases. And I already made that comment. Legislative update. The legislature has not met over the summer. The interim committees have not met. We had a little discussion I did with Andy Karzian at CDOT, the legislative director, and passed those comments on to the legislative committee at PPACG, perhaps bringing some additional initiative to the MPOs, because the legislature is not formulating that over the summer. We hope to get some more clarity from the MPO statewide. Major discussion at STAC on the budget. HUTF, the state Highway User Transportation Fund, almost a $63 million drop in revenue. They managed to, through some budget cutting internally, to rebuild about 50 of that, still creating a shortage of about $12.8 million. Working through some options and looking for, they did take extensive STAC comment on other budget cuts across the state. STAC did approve, recommended approval to the Transportation Commission of its full statewide plan, 2045 statewide transportation plan. Lengthy discussion on that, and basically kudos around the table for a great job statewide. And then finally, briefly, lengthy discussion on the stacked bylaws. Commissioner Williams has been on that subcommittee talking about major changes to how stack is governed. Lengthy discussion on how the chairman specifically rotates. Vince Rogowski has been chairman, I don't know, 16 years, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's some discussion about term limiting the leadership of stack, which would open up on a rotating basis to run the state, which would open up more opportunities, frankly, to our MPO for statewide leadership of the stack. We'll see where that goes. That's kind of in a rewrite consideration. And Jill, if you don't mind, I'll ask if Holly has any comments on the bylaws.
Yeah, I was going to ask that myself. Holly, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Great.
So no, it's been kind of fun. We call, the one option Vince for life. But as we know, eventually some commissioners leave. And so we thought of rotating the chair around to give more people experience. And I'm always one to push to give other people the experience of being chair. The argument for the Vince for Life was that, it is a very technical subject, and they do the bus tours throughout the states. There's a lot of networking. So we're just going to have to put it out there for a vote of the actual members and see what they choose. But the bylaws has been a fun discussion. A little bit hard on CDOT because their primary purpose is to put together the Transportation Commission agenda, and we feel the primary purpose of STAC should be to make sure that we weigh in on the Transportation Commission agenda. So getting the STAC agenda ready so we could weigh in is something that frequently happens on a short time frame. So we've had many discussions about when the agenda has to be published. It's not something that we get it 1 month in advance and vote on it or have it presented like we do at PPACG. Sometimes it's 4 days in advance. So the whole thing's been really fascinating to talk about.
Sounds like it. Well, we look forward to hearing what happens.
It'll be fun.
Do you have more?
Thank you. Unless you have any questions.
Okay, other questions for Norm or Holly? Okay. I noticed in this month's agenda there was a conversation about aviation and their goals, and that was interesting. I said they hadn't done that update in like a decade. So I look forward to hearing about that next month. Just something. Yeah, I forget that CDOT also talks about aviation. Okay, the last item is the Executive Director's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just have 4 items real briefly. And for the last item, if Jody's still on the line, I may need Jody to weigh in on this one as well. But a couple other items first. You met our military fellowship intern at the start of the meeting, Ariel Pizzola-Sur. So you'll see Ariel around with us here for the next 16 weeks. And he's currently active duty with Fort Carson, but going to be working with us on a handful of projects. And if anybody is interested in, as well, one of the local jurisdictions in working with a military member that's transitioning out of the military and wants to get involved in local government, it's a great program that Darren Tangeman up in Woodland Park takes the lead on. So feel free to reach out to Darren or to me if you need Darren's contact info. But fantastic program. So we're glad to get Ariel on board and get him exposed to a bunch of different things we're working on at PPACG. Secondly, spinning off the STAC comments and the STAC report just now, notice that we've got a conflict with the STAC meeting and our PPACG board workshop in October. So we're going to need to find a different date or maybe shift our board workshop to the afternoon. I think STAC is the morning of Friday, October the 9th, which would be our normal workshop date. So I'll send out a poll. We don't need to do one right now on the fly, but I'll see if maybe we can do it in the afternoon on Friday the 9th or maybe Thursday the day before, if that's possible. Item, just want to mention that we're also going to try to schedule a retreat, semi-workshop / retreat, separate from our board workshop in October to focus on specifically our long-range transportation planning efforts. Hard to believe that we just wrapped up the 2045 long-range plan back in January. It seems like a long time ago, but we're gearing up already internally, getting ready for a 2050 long-range transportation plan update where we have a new horizon and we look at other factors that are changing that we need to consider throughout the region. It's a multi-year effort to get to the end result where we actually adopt a final plan. So, we've got to plan this out over the next couple of years, but we wanted to especially get some feedback and direction from current board members that we have that are about to transition off our board after this year, to get your direction since you've been involved and have some muscle memory with how we've done our planning here in the past, to give us some direction and feedback and help us kind of set the tone for that next big update, because there's a lot of stuff we need to start doing as early as starting next year in our long range plan efforts with various studies and other sub plans that we need to develop around active transportation plan, congestion management and things like that. So we're going to reach out and see if we can find a date in October separate from the workshop or separate from our board meeting date to have a specific retreat around the long range plan process and all that good stuff. Finally, and I'll turn this over to Jody in a moment, we're going to bring an item in October to the board for direction on possibly moving the City of Colorado Springs Commission on Aging that's been in place for a couple of years over to PPACG under the AAA. We think it fits really well within our mission. It would be a good policy discussion for us to have within the PPACG umbrella. And between our Madam Chair and Jody Barker and I, we've been engaged in conversations about it, and we think we might be ready to bring that to the board in October. So Jody, anything you want to fill in the blanks here on?
Sure, I'll keep it brief since we're at the end of our morning here, but yeah, this was very exciting. First of all, this is Jody Barker, Director of the Area Agency on Aging. Thank you, Board of Directors and Madam Chair, for allowing me to share just a moment. The Colorado Commission on Aging was actually set up within the age-friendly Colorado Springs system back in 2017. And it originally came to the staff at that time, the director and the AAA director at that time, well, just prior to 2017, as possibly coming under the PPACG system, and was decided not to be done that way. Instead, went under the leadership of the city. And something sparked a conversation back in the spring for me to figure out how we could engage even further with the Commission on Aging. And just as it sounds, it is a Colorado Springs Commission on Aging. For those of you who know me, I really enjoy collaboration and figuring out how we can engage more voices to support our aging networks, and especially since we work in a tri-county system. And so as part of that outreach to talk about engaging, increasing that collaboration, it was proposed that, well, why doesn't the PPACG take on these and support the Commission on Aging and give us that ability to engage and increase collaboration even further across the three-county region. And so one conversation led to several more, and we are in the process, and the city is in the city council and the leadership there are in the process of determining how best to dissolve the Commission on Aging from the city and allow us to stand it up within the PPACG governance. So I have been working with the leadership there as well as members from the city council to determine how best to do that. Our hope is to bring a resolution, a simplified resolution to the board at the October meeting, which will allow us to raise up this Commission on Aging and make it a regional Commission on Aging to speak more to policy and planning. As you know, the Regional Advisory Council, which serves the AAA right now, is really more around guidance for the funding and service policies from the Older Americans Act and the Older Coloradans Act. The Commission on Aging would serve a completely different role. So it's in process, and we hope to bring a resolution for you to vote on at next meeting in October. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Jody. And just so you know, the City of Colorado Springs is working alongside to try to move its ordinances forward to move the commission over at the same time. So hopefully we can all do that together to benefit the commission. And if that's all, Andy? Okay. Then we are on to meeting member announcements. Are there any member announcements before we go today?
Madam Chair, just a couple quick from me. This is Stan. The first one, I just want to say thank you to the state of Colorado for providing $258,000 to the Pikes Peak Workforce Center to allow our second site that's on North Academy to continue past 31 December and go into June. Currently, that facility was set up by CARES Act funding, and under current federal legislation, we have to expend those dollars by 31 December. But we're still going to have lots of people trying to get back into a job going into next year. So the state funding will allow us to continue to operate that facility. And we're helping about 60 people a day through appointments in a facility that is COVID safe. So we've assisted over 2,000 people so far. The state funding will allow us to do that an extra 6 months. So my thanks to that. Also, the second topic, very brief. On COVID numbers, you all can take a look at the Pikes Peak, the El Paso County Public Health website, and it'll tell you that there's been a total of 6,281 cases as of today, but only 580 of those are active, leaving a population percentage of 0.07% that we know about that has coronavirus. Also, in the last 7 days, there have been no deaths. And in the last 3 days, there have been 0 hospitalizations. And this month, there have been 6 outbreaks, but all of those outbreaks have been transmission from one person to another for a total of 2, or transmission from 1 to 2 others for a total outbreak of 3. They've been very, very low numbers. So we're doing a great job in El Paso County dealing with COVID issues. We've got to remain vigilant. We've got to remain safe. We've got to keep our businesses open. But the numbers are looking really good for now, and let's just keep working at it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Stan. I appreciate that optimism. Anyone else have an announcement?
Good morning, Madam Chair. This is Melissa Porter. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Welcome, Colonel.
Okay. Sorry about that. I tried to chime in during the military portion, but I was challenged with my mute button. So I do have a couple of updates from the Air Force Academy. I mentioned last month that Lieutenant General Richard Clark was confirmed as our next Academy Superintendent. I'm happy to report that the change of command, where he will assume the role of superintendent, is scheduled for the 23rd of September. And on that same day, our current superintendent, Lieutenant General Jay Silveria, will retire after 35 years of Air Force or service to our nation. And then second, we are moving forward to hold an inter-service football game against Navy the first weekend in October. Details are still being worked out, and obviously it depends on the current COVID situation, whether or not we will continue to move forward. But the details, once they are worked out, will be posted on all Academy social media sites. And that's all I have, unless there are any questions.
That's great. I will definitely miss General Silveria. And the football game sounds awesome. And Navy, we know, is really bad. They already lost big time to BYU, which Holly should be happy.
Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, we would really like Air Force to have BYU come here.
That would be amazing.
That'd be fun.
Well, it'd probably be better for the Air Force to just concede the Navy game already.
Oh,
that's true.
Any other questions for Melissa? Okay, thank you, Colonel. Okay, any other jurisdiction announcements?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead, Sharon.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Sharon, we can hear you.
Okay. Hey, Jolene just let me know from the senior center that they are having parking bingo a couple times a month. There is next Thursday, come at 12, but they actually got picked up by a station and it went national. So our seniors are rock and rolling with bingo in their cars and having a fun time. So 8 o'clock, come at 12:30 to stay in your car and free.
Okay, Sharon, we can barely hear you, so I'm going to encourage you to share your information maybe through email. I'm hearing socially distanced bingo, which sounds amazing. But so please send that parking lot bingo, even better. So please just let us know more about that through email maybe. Okay, anyone else? Okay, then that completes the agenda for today's meeting. And I appreciate all of you being here today. Very successful meeting, and I will see all of you no later than next month at this time. Have a great week and be safe out there. Goodbye, we're adjourned.